What's the scariest disease you've heard of? Rabies. Fuck that. ALS. You just get to chill while your body starts to fail you. You become more and more of a burden to those around you. Slowly lose the ability to walk, feed yourself, bathe. Then one day you can't get up at all. Then you can't talk. You barely move your head at all. But you can't still think. You can see your family suffering, watching you slowly deteriorate. It's a nightmare for all involved. Dementia, and because you basically sit back and watch as it slowly starts to eat away at you. But there's nothing you can do. Locked-in syndrome. Fully conscious but can only move your eyes. Just fucking locked inside your own body with your mind. Alzheimer's disease. With memories effectively making you who you are to a certain degree. I can't begin to imagine losing them all. And not knowing who my family is. Glioblastoma MTF killed my wife 16 months. Divorcees of Reddit. When did you know your marriage was over? When I found the text messages of him telling her he loved her and joking about my life insurance money. He told me he'd had an affair. Initially he begged me to stay together, to work things out. But within 2 weeks he had cold feet again and had even met up with his affair partner. So yeah. Most conversations turned into an argument. They became more distant. Resentment had well and truly set in. When we sat down as a couple and agreed we could not afford a new car, then 2 days later he bought the new car he agreed we couldn't afford. I came home from work that night ready to argue with him and suddenly realized he knew I would get angry, and that was the price he was willing to pay to have the car. It took a few months to get the money to move out, but my marriage was over that night. I gave up and faced reality when we had our one couples counseling appointment. Therapist asked on a scale of 1 to 10 how much we wanted to save the marriage. I said 10 and he said 0. But it turns out I didn't want to save it either because I realized he didn't like me all that much. And that's not a healthy life. We had problems before this night, but I kept trying counseling and other things hoping it would work out. But our youngest was little. Maybe not even 2 yet? She had a history of seizures. So we were used to them. But it was still scary. It's the middle of the night and I'm walking back and forth in the living room with her because she had a really high temp. It was 104 something. I was trying to figure out if I wanted to take her to the ER or not, as I remember her being really lethargic as well. My ex, her dad, stood there screaming at me about what a whore I was. What a piece of shit I was. How I ruined his life. Etc. I remember asking him something like, what if your daughter came to you and said her partner was talking to her like this? What would you do? He looked at me and said something like, well, if she deserves it, and shrugged his shoulders. I don't even remember what set him off that night. What I did to upset him. I just remember holding our youngest and over his shoulder I saw my daughter, the oldest and from a previous relationship, sitting at the top of the stairs watching this. She was probably around 11. And I just decided I was done. I told myself I was going to make it through the holidays and her birthday. We had a good holiday and her birthday was the same shit. Different day. The attention wasn't focused on him. So he was a jerk. I knew I was making the right decision. I waited until the clock hit midnight and I said, I want a divorce, and never looked back. If you could make anyone fall in love with you, who would you choose? Me, myself, and I. Self-loathing isn't fun anymore. Warren Buffett. He's rich AF and old AF. Now we play the waiting game. The lady working at Target on Register 7 last Friday. Elon Musk. Imagine how it'd affect his reputation to suddenly fall in love with a teenage boy. Trump. Trump being in love with a 49-year-old black male would fuck with his base like nothing else. My wife. Over and over again. What's the grossest thing you've ever tasted? I once took a nice healthy bite of blueberry coffee cake. Turns out it was regular coffee cake covered in mold. I couldn't get the smell and taste out of my sinuses for hours. There's a product that you can buy that's meant to discourage dogs from chewing on stuff. It's called Bitter Yuck. Let me tell you, it is both bitter _ and _ yuck. I work with my brother and I usually drive. He started chewing tobacco and I didn't even know. He kept a water bottle to spit into in the cup holder where I usually keep my water bottle. Yep, you know the rest. The solution you drink before a colonoscopy. Maybe not the worst, but the sheer volume of that vile shit you have to consume is disgusting. Oyster-flavored ice cream. Beer in a can that someone had used as an ashtray. What is something that was billed as the next big thing, and actually was not a complete failure? The internet. I remember when it was first starting out in the late 90s and nerds were saying it would change everything about the way we live and do business, etc. And I was like, yeah. But it turned out they were right. Amazon. It was clear fairly early on that it was going to be a huge disruption to bookstores. But it wasn't clear that it was going to disrupt all the stores. Solid-state drives. They're better in nearly every way. Faster, smaller, lighter, lower power, and by now, cheaper up to about 512 gigabytes. Spinning hard drives are still cheaper if you want to store terabytes and are okay with being less efficient. The chip will wear out after being ridden too much. But that limit is way beyond what you'll do before you buy another computer. Online shopping. I acknowledge that I'm old-fashioned and still prefer to go to stores and try things on. But in my town, there's only one store left I buy clothes at. Our mall is almost entirely vacant spaces. Of the 4 cornerstone stores they had, only one remains. One was replaced by a grocery store. A Macy's became a VA clinic. The other has just been vacant for 6 years now. Electric scooters are becoming what Segway wanted to be, a bicycle for the lazy. Sliced bread people are still buying it, if I recall correctly. What is the worst thing about Reddit? The Redditors. The bots. They repost. They farm karma. They just copy-paste answers from top threads. It's annoying because a lot of them are really obvious. But there's nothing being done about them. How is karma that important? I get that they are trying to influence what gets seen and what gets posted by upvoting propaganda. But do that many Redditors really form an opinion based on what posts are at the top? A majority of Redditors are insufferable know-it-alls who will talk down to and lecture anyone. Because they feel they know better or they don't agree with the way you've done something. You know the type. The guy who has to say, actually, and go on some tangent in every conversation to make sure everyone knows they're the smartest guy in the room. I can't tell you how many times I've seen or received a rambling and condescending paragraph of unsolicited advice because some Reddit dweeb felt the need to chime in and show how much more knowledgeable they are. And other Redditors eat that shit up and upvote them. If someone texts me a Reddit link and I click on it, it asks me if I want to continue on the website or the app. I have the app already. When I click the app, it takes me to the App Store. Then when I click open in the App Store, it just takes me to my home page. This is so fucking stupid. Is there a fix? People with PhDs in pertinent fields are removed from science for calling out errors in the popular science articles that moderators like you, MVEA, post. I joined for the comments. Now the comments are what stop me opening the app. What's it like to still be deeply in love with someone years after they've fallen out of love with you? How do you cope? I have no idea the person they are now or even what they're up to now. But I still am in love with the version of them I knew. Maybe they still love me in the way that they used to know me. But I'll never know. Acceptance is the closest thing you'll ever get to relief. Are you sure you're deeply in love with them still? Or the idea of them? We often put people, especially former flames, on a pedestal that isn't accurate to who they really were. You have to let them go since they've let you go. Focus on what you can control. Work on yourself and pursue things that bring you happiness. Don't let it slow you down. I carried a flame for my ex for years after we split up. But the way I handled it is by realizing that while we might not be able to control our feelings, we can control our behavior. So I would simply not contact my ex and I would go out, meet other women, chat with them, dance with them, date them, and start relationships with them. If I still for some reason had feelings for my ex, then it just wasn't anybody else's problem. It wasn't the problem of the new lady I was with and was making happy. And it sure wasn't my ex's problem either. At a point I couldn't see a life going forward without them. Then I realized, hey, I've gone a month, then 2 months, then 6 months, then a year without talking to them. It sucked a whole lot. They immediately started dating a new guy almost immediately, but you do get over it. It's not easy. And it's honestly crazy how much a hold one person can have over you. But it does get better. I do think a problem that a lot of people do fall into though is the immediate rebound. Hookups, relationships. You get the immediate, haha, I don't need them. But a lot of people do get this sense of guilt after. So, just take it at your own pace and you'll be okay. I've always taken a long time after breakups to put myself out there again. We all move at our own pace. None are wrong. Just don't force yourself. For me, I find it similar to grief. After some years, the same emotion is still there, even if the intensity has diminished due to adapting to our as part of daily life. It takes a long time to get over something genuine. Maybe 20 years. I am on my year 17. I became functional again after second year. Stopped thinking every day about her on year 5. And stopped having dreams after year 10. Haven't completely forgotten, though. Subscribe, my brothers.